anything that will make you stand before Jesus ultimately and you'll be crying. It's not worth it. Before I go into the main message, I'd like to share with you why heaven will be full of surprises. Why heaven will be full of surprises. Many years ago, my mother happened to have walked into our family house at Idiaraba. And walking into this house is one of our uncles who had lived waywardly and wasted his life on riotous living. He was given to womanizing, he was given to alcohol, he was given to all manners of immorality and wasting. And so that day, mommy walked into the place, and this man had sustained an injury that had refused to heal. Perhaps, I wouldn't know, maybe the man was diabetic, but the injury was festering and everybody felt repulsed and nobody wanted to come close to him. So he was on the floor there and he was dying gradually. Now, for some reason, my mother had to get to the family house to do one or two things there and saw him by the well where he laid, and the family members passing and walking past, and some of the tenants on that property ignored him there. And she said she walked up to him and spoke to him and encouraged him and said, "Uncle, but you know, if you die now, there's no heaven for you to enter into." And she said she witnessed to him, and the man said, "You know what, I like to give my life to Christ." And, you know, she led him in the sinner's prayers, she ministered to him, and the man gave his life to Christ. And shortly after, I think the following day, he died. Now, as far as the family is concerned, the negative lifestyle of that man and the image he had built through wasteful living, his practices and doings with women, the way he handled his own property and his father's property, the inheritance of his brother, was what was topmost on the heart of the family. As far as everyone was concerned, those that were believers among them, this man had gone to hell. But within a very short span of time, God, seeing that he had 24 hours to enter into eternity, had orchestrated the foot of a missionary who happened to be my mother at this instant into this particular place where this man was abandoned on the floor, ignored by everybody, and had the compassion of nobody because of the way he had lived. And she went to him, spoke to him, encouraged him, and brought forth the word to him. And this man gave his life to Christ, and he died the following day. Why heaven will be full of surprises. As a follow-up on my thoughts concerning the passing on of Dr. Miles Monroe and some other events that I saw in the course of the week, at least I think about thrice, I saw around the area where I live some people mourning for the dead. And again, as I gave thought to it and looked at how this man called Dr. Miles Monroe had labored fiercely on the face of the earth and without any warning seemingly was taken away from us, I had to begin to give some serious thinking or do some serious thinking. You know, because over and across the nations of the earth, many things are going on. And I find God speaking to my heart in this particular direction, that there will be surprises in heaven.
How can you walk when you don't know the way of the wind? How can you run when you don't know the way of the Spirit? How can you fly like the eagles when you don't know the wind?
This church called the Revelation Church, the church in the book of Revelation, the Laodicean church, had everything anyone could possibly lay claim to or boast to having. The church had money, the church had property, the church had everything. And somewhere along the line, the church began to misplace its priority and its judgment and began to draw its identity from the material things it possessed. And he was no longer praying, he was no longer studying, he was no longer fasting, he was no longer reaching out to the lost, although it kept the name of the Lord at the front burner. And Jesus said to the church, he said, you know what? The truth of the matter is, you are big, you are magnificent, you are famous, you have a name, everybody calls you. But in reality, from where I stand, you are neither hot nor cold. You know, to be hot means that you're on fire for me. To be cold means that you are just lost in the world. And in the illustrative sermon we had here like 3 weeks ago on common practices among believers with damnable consequences, I showed you how you could put a drop of petrol in a cup of water, and when you look into that water and carry another cup that is not contaminated, you will not see the difference. All right? And I showed you how you could pour a measure of petrol into a cup of water and put it beside another cup of water, and you could see that there was instantly something different here. And so this Laodicean church is the church that had a drop of worldliness in it. All right? It had all the paraphernalia of spirituality that you could associate with the word of God, but God said that you are not standing before me. Now, I'd like to say this, that the Bible tells us a couple of reasons, and in my thinking, I found some of the reasons why I think that heaven will be full of surprises. Like this uncle of mine that departed before, he was a young man himself, and everybody felt that man had gone to hell. Only myself and my mother and perhaps any other person she told would have realized that man made it safely to heaven. Now, he wasn't a preacher on the face of the earth, but he made it. Now, so 6 reasons why I think that heaven will be full of surprises. I believe there are more, but these are the 6 that I could pen down, before I came down this morning. Number 1, because of the discrepancies of our definitions in certain areas. Heaven will be full of surprises because of the discrepancies of our definitions in certain areas as it relates to the Word of God. Now, 3 critical areas where I think that we have varying definitions from God, and it's going to be a source of surprise in heaven, is number 1, success. God said to the church in Laodicea, or the church of Laodicea, he says, you are wealthy, you are rich, you are this, you are that, you are famous, you are known, but as far as I'm concerned, you are poor, you are miserable, and you need my help. Now, at that point, that church did not look like it needed help. Am I communicating with you? One of the reasons why nations of the world, countries, the West, like Europe, like America, appear that the gospel is not thriving and advancing forcefully as it should is because it's a community that is settled in terms of order and in terms of arrangement. The Bible tells us concerning Joseph that Joseph was in Potiphar's house, and he was a successful man because God was with him. He was in prison. He was a successful man because God was with him. Now, although he was in prison, the Bible defined him as successful not because of the material possession, not because of the car, not because of the houses, or not because of the things he's been able to gather. And so I realized also that one of the reasons why there'll be many unpleasant surprises in heaven or pleasant surprises in heaven is because of our definition of success, our definition of greatness, and our definition of godliness. Who is a great man? Who is a successful man? As far as we are concerned today, a successful church is a church that has a campground. A successful church is a church that is massive in size and is constantly on the television or is constantly doing things that everybody is gathering to be a part of. Is that God's definition of success? Or is a successful church a myopic church that is not reaching out to his environment, and the people have just refused to go out to do anything about evangelism, are not interested in anything spiritual? They just want to be with themselves, by themselves, for themselves, only for themselves, reaching out to nobody.
How can you walk when you don't know the way of the wind? How can you run when you don't know the way of the Spirit? How can you fly like the eagles when you don't know the wind?